you sure?" he asked. Ybarra nodded without saying a word. Apsey stood for a moment, knowing this was his last chance. "I was hoping we could talk," he said. "I came a long way to see you." Ybarra folded his arms and turned away. As he climbed back into his car, Apsey realized this was the end. No more interviews and no more trips around the country. For 3 years, he lived and breathed this case. For 3 years, he had descended into an unimaginable nightmare. 36 months of blood and fear and ghosts. Trips to the grocery store or restaurants with his wife weren't the same anymore, his mind wandering to the images described over and over in sworn statements. Even to grizzled war crimes investigators like Apsey, the details were outrageous, and no one in the story was as frightening as the man back in that shack. A half-Apache, half-Mexican soldier who, among other things, had once worn necklaces of human ears and tied a scalp on the end of his rifle as a trophy. An Austrian immigrant who was educated by Jesuits in his native country, he was appalled by what he had learned over the past several years. It was counter to everything he knew about the people of his adopted country. In the night gloom, Sam Ybarra stumbled toward his mother's trailer just beyond the scrubland that covered one end of the San Carlos Indian Reservation. Though he was drunk, he knew the road by heart. Since his dishonorable discharge from the Army in 1969, this was his world, a desolate area 100 miles east of Phoenix and home to thousands of Native Americans for generations. Most of his days began with a beer and a joint. By late afternoon, he was passed out. Ever since Apsey and Pereiro had left his house, Ybarra had been restless. He began downing bottles of Coors shortly after his visitors departed, and hadn't stopped until he walked out the door of his shack to go to his mother's. He reached his mother's home and opened the back door. He plopped down on a couch in the living room, hoping the thoughts would fade. But each time he closed his eyes, the memories would rush back. The more he tried to forget, the more he remembered. The door opened and Thurleen Ramos walked into the home. She flicked on a light to find her son once again in her living room. He was curled on the couch, tears in his eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked. He responded, "It's my life, what I did. I killed people, Mama. I killed regular people. My God, what did I do?" Thurleen had seen her son shake and cry before, but not like this. She knew that the best thing she could do was listen. She didn't want to push him. She didn't want to know the details or why the Army kept returning to ask him questions about a war that ended for her when her son returned. But for Sam, the war was always there, and nothing could make him forget, especially after investigators showed up. This time they hadn't even asked him about the others: Hawkins, Trout, Barnett, Doyle. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces, and the faces of those they killed. He had promised his family he would never talk about what happened when he served with Tiger Force. But in the darkness, he would wake up sweating, and sometimes the slightest noise would roust him from his sleep. His wife would reassure him he was not in Vietnam, that he was home, in his own bed. Still, there were times she would watch him as he cried in his sleep, or as he jumped up in bed and acted like he had a rifle in his hand. Sitting on his mother's sofa, Ybarra began sobbing uncontrollably. As he always did when facing the nightmares, Ybarra would bring up his best friend, Kenneth Boots Green. The memories of Boots lying in the dirt, blood gushing from his head, haunted Ybarra. "Why did he have to die?" he asked his mother between tears. "Why?" Because when it all got crazy, when Boots went down in an ambush, that's when Ybarra really lost control. Chapter 1, 1967. Even through the haze of smoke in the dimly lit lounge, Sam Ybarra glimpsed Ken Green as he walked through the door. "Kenny, over here!" shouted Ybarra over the music blaring from a tape deck. It had been nearly a year since they arrived in Vietnam, and this was one of the few weekends the two could meet on a break. Green introduced Sam to two buddies, Leon Fletcher and Ed Beck. For days, Ken had been telling them about his time with Crazy Sam, cruising the streets of Globe, Arizona, guzzling Ripple with the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction crackling over the radio. And now, in this sad corner of Southeast Asia, the two old friends were together again. To most people, they were as opposite as they were close. Green was boyish and cocky, a Richard Gere look-alike who could turn heads in a crowded room. Ybarra was dark-skinned with a round, pock-marked face, awkwardly shy, unless he was drinking. But for all their differences, they shared something in common. They were constantly in trouble. Green was known for his temper, quick to start fights at Globe High School. Though he stood only 5 feet 5 inches, he rarely backed down. Everyone knew to stay away from him. As a junior, Green had brutally attacked another student who was a year older and a foot taller for looking at him the wrong way in the hallway. Dozens of classmates watched in horror as he pummeled the student senseless on the floor. Back home on summer nights,